Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the content patch for the 16th of July 2013. My name is TotalBiscuit with today's gaming news and comment. Coming up in the show, Street Fighter 4 Ultra has been announced, the Mad Max gameplay trailer seems to be anything but, Tribes Ascend will no longer receive updates, and let's bring back a little feature that I like to call Kicksmarter. We'll be talking about Satellite Rain a little bit later on the show. All this and the OC Remix track of the day is coming your way right about now. At the record-breaking EVO 2013 this year, Capcom announced Street Fighter 4 Ultra, which will include 5 new characters, as well as new stages, new modes, and a bunch of rebalancing tweaks. The game will be available as a $15 DLC, or on its own as a $40 standalone. The game will add Rolento, Alina, Hugo, and Poison to the title, as well as an unannounced 5th character that has apparently never been seen in Street Fighter before. It is entirely possible that our hope of getting Mayor Hager into the game is still alive. We will find out once Capcom decides to announce it. It's always interesting to see updates to fighting games because I think we've got a hell of a lot more context than we used to when it comes down to these particular titles. The reason is that the Kickstarter for Skullgirls, which required over $100,000 to develop a single new character, is quite indicative of the actual cost of updating a major fighting game. One has to imagine that updating Street Fighter 4 costs significantly more when adding a new character. This actually brings into rather sharp focus the fact that the cost of these games and the updates that they require were not actually that unreasonable. The breakdown that was given by the Skullgirls devs as to the actual cost of developing just a single new two-dimensional character for their game does indicate that the cost of making Street Fighter characters is probably significantly higher than that, and asking, say, $15 for 5 new characters is not that unreasonable. Admittedly, Capcom has come under fire over the past few years, specifically for their Super Street Fighter 4 update, which included 8 new characters as well as a new Ultra for each, and was not released in DLC form. It is in fact a $40 standalone. This of course was a bit of a kick in the teeth. Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition was then released as a DLC, which was for $15, including 4 new characters, which was a little bit more reasonable. Those of us on PC were able to buy the Arcade Edition, but not Super Street Fighter 4, so it may very well be that Ultra decides to skip once again, which would actually be unfortunate. Now, if we're to look at the Skullgirls breakdown, we see some rather interesting figures here. So they're looking for $150,000. They did get it, by the way. And this is what they said it was going to be spent on. $48,000 is the staff salary for 8 people for 10 weeks. So that's pretty much $2,400 a month, yeah, for each person. $30,000 in animation and cleanup contracting, $4,000 for voice recording, $2,000 for hitbox contracting, which I imagine is extremely important, $5,000 for audio implementation contracting, $20,000 for QA testing, $10,000 for first-party certification. Yeah, I mean, that in itself is ridiculous, isn't it? $10,500 for Indiegogo and payment processing fees, and $20,500 for manufacturing and shipping the physical perks from that particular Indiegogo campaign. As you can see, the 3 big elements of that were the salaries for the staff, the animation contracting out, and the QA testing. I have to imagine that the animation is done in-house for Capcom since they're a significantly larger company, but all that means is that the staff salaries are going to be significantly increased. Then you're throwing 5 characters into the mix, plus all of the balance that has to be done in order to make that work, with a significantly larger lineup than Skullgirls, which started, I believe, with 8 characters as opposed to the 5,000 that apparently Street Fighter 4 has. Yeah, you can imagine it's going to be damn expensive. And it makes sense, really, when you think about it. The essence of a fighting game is the characters. I mean, the characters are the gameplay. Adding a new character into the game changes the game. And there's really nothing else to it. There isn't. I mean, if you look at Street Fighter 4, the addition of stages doesn't do anything. They don't affect you in any way. It's not like Injustice, where the stage actually comes into the game itself. It is part of the gameplay. It's just a background scene. So as a direct result, you can just say, oh, well, they're just developing a significant new chunk of the game and they're actually asking $15 for it. That's not that unreasonable. That's pretty damn surprising. I'm fairly excited for it, especially if it happens to actually come to PC. It's a good reason for me to dust off my controller and play a bit more Street Fighter, which, to be fair, is the game I prefer to Mortal Kombat. I'm sorry, I like Street Fighter 4 more. Well, it helps that I'm better at it. That's actually, no, that's probably the whole reason. The so-called gameplay trailer that was teased on Twitter a couple of days ago for Mad Max has been released, and it contains basically no gameplay whatsoever. The response to that has been mixed, to say the least, since all it really shows is exactly what we would have expected from a Mad Max game, which includes driving, shooting people, more driving, more shooting people, and a character that looks absolutely nothing like Mad Max. So that was a little bit unfortunate, to say the least. There have been quite a few people that were disappointed, calling it something of a scam, saying that because it was not actual gameplay and it was just in-game engine stuff, that it really wasn't a particularly good indication of what the game will actually be about. I have to say, I think that we knew what the game was going to be about anyway. I don't think this really surprises all that many people. There is minor gameplay elements in this. I mean, you can see the zipline section in the background, as well as a little bit of vehicular combat and things like that, the kind of stuff that we would expect. But I think what people really want is details. And when you release a trailer like this that is so obviously cherry-picked, then people are going to doubt its authenticity. I mean, the first 30 seconds of the trailer don't show any gameplay at all. In fact, there's no real gameplay per se shown until the 53-second mark, and it doesn't really show an awful lot. And don't get me wrong, it is an Avalanche title, so I expect it to be fantastic, but at the end of the day, if I want to be blown away by an Avalanche title, you got to show me some of that crazy emergent gameplay that made Just Cause 2 so great. And my concern is that the limitations of the universe might actually cause that not to happen. I mean, I look at this and I'm like, oh, it's Rage, I suppose. And that's the first impression that I get. Which I think is the danger when you cherry-pick a trailer like this. If you want to impress people, show them a nice 5-minute chunk of gameplay. It doesn't matter how curated it is, just show what the game's actually going to be. And don't tease people on Twitter by saying, yeah, we're going to show you some gameplay, and then show like 1 minute 51 of really, really cut stuff that was done in the engine, but may very well not at all be representative of the final product. I have a feeling that gamers are getting a little bit sick of that, considering that the last few times that's happened, we have ended up being hoodwinked. So there you go. Show us some gameplay, please. That would be nice. Hi-Rez, the developers of Tribes Ascend, have announced that the title will not be receiving any more major updates in the foreseeable future. The last big patch for Tribes Ascend was actually in March, and Hi-Rez are currently working on the sequel to Global Agenda, as well as putting more content into Smite. Todd Harris of Hi-Rez reported that there are no major dev updates planned for Tribes Ascend in the next 6 months. For the next 6 months, our primary development focus is Smite. Beyond that, it is Global Agenda 2, and beyond that, a Tribes Ascend 2 would be more likely than a major update to Tribes Ascend. But to be clear, no devs are currently working towards Tribes Ascend 2. So the current situation is that the game will still run, but you are not going to be expecting any major updates anytime soon. Needless to say, the community is not exactly happy about that, not by any stretch of the imagination. Hi-Rez has also come under fire recently for claims that the patching program that they use for Tribes Ascend has been scanning users' computers for third-party software. Needless to say, Hi-Rez does not exactly have the best reputation right now. Now, frankly, as someone that really liked Tribes Ascend, I do believe that Hi-Rez did not do a great job with it, and I am annoyed that now is the time that they decide, you know what, let's just kind of leave it alone and let people deal with it themselves. There's always going to be that risk with free-to-play titles that eventually the game will get abandoned when it's simply not profitable to deal with it anymore. But if you are an indie studio like Hi-Rez, and yes they are, they're an indie developer, they're not that big. They're certainly by no means a two-man garage operation, but they're not that big. There is that risk when they're working on 3 titles at once that resources are going to be limited, and naturally, they're going to be throwing as many resources as they can get their hands on at the game that's actually making them money right now, which is Smite, not Tribes Ascend. The thing is that it's not really a crying shame that Tribes Ascend is in the state that it currently is. It's Hi-Rez's fault. I'm sorry, it is. Like, I am disappointed that Tribes Ascend didn't get more popular. It had a good period of being really popular and awesome. And it's a good game. It is actually a really good game. It's pretty much one of a kind. Good luck finding something that fast that's currently available on the market. But let's be entirely frank here, Hi-Rez made some mistakes, and they didn't listen to their community. They didn't foster the competitive scene, and they consistently released weapons in an overpowered state before nerfing them later. And quite frankly, their monetization early on was not that good. It took a long time to actually get to the stage that you needed to unlock the weapons. And by the time that they finally cut that down and also made the gold edition available so you could get all of the unlocks, it was probably a little bit too late. Now, if they had continued to support the game after the fact, and if they had continued to push the notion of actual microtransactions instead of selling guns for like $7 to $8 a piece and having absurdly expensive skins be the only monetization options, then they would have probably found that it would have worked out a little bit better for them. Stuff like the voice packs again came in too little too late. Not only that, but they're actually quite expensive for what they are. And it became fairly obvious that they'd shifted their focus to Smite quite some time ago. Lack of updates, lack of response to the community. No, it's not good. I'm sorry, it isn't. I've supported Tribes Ascend an awful lot. I liked that game. A lot. I thought it was one of the most enjoyable FPS that I've played in the last few years when it comes to multiplayer, and arguably it still is. But it's really hard to suggest that you should be supporting a company that clearly is not interested in supporting that game. They're interested in supporting Smite right now. And they abandoned Global Agenda in a fairly similar fashion. There is a pattern of behavior here. And it's not entirely their fault, but it seems like they're just taking on too much. A company of that size should surely be putting everything they have into one game instead of trying to run 3 and then develop a 4th. How can you do that? You've shown that you can't do that. You've shown that you don't have the resources to properly support all of your games, so stop making so many games, please. Global Agenda could have been good. It had a lot of potential. Tribes was good, and it was held down by poor decisions and lack of support. This is why people don't want to give you money, because they're not confident that you'll actually stick around. Tribes Ascend hasn't been out for that long. It came out in 2012, for God's sake, and now it's not getting any major updates anymore. I still think it's a fun game to play, but I feel that people want to start dedicating time and money towards games that they know will be supported. And good luck convincing them of that when you flat out say, yep, no more major updates coming. And finally, I did a show a little while ago called Kicksmarter. I did one episode of it and decided not to do another one, but I think it would probably be nice if every now and again we popped a little bit of Kicksmarter into Content Patch. I don't think it really needs to be a separate show, and as far as I'm concerned, exciting Kickstarters are news in and of themselves. So today I would like to have a look at the true spiritual successor to Syndicate by the name of Satellite Rain. This is coming from 5 Live Studio, and at the time of recording, they have £231,000 out of the £350,000, which is just over $500,000 that they're looking for in order to actually make this game work. The Kickstarter is frequently updated with information, and the pitch, as far as I'm concerned, is very strong. What excites me is the actual AI of this game, and the way that they treat it, the ideas that they have. They're looking to allow unexpected and interesting things to happen, with strong AI behaviors actually driving all of that. Guard boredom, tiredness, and bravery levels actually becoming a factor there. The idea that, in fact, the guard might just not stand there and fight you when he's outnumbered. He might just run away because he's a bit of a coward. The fact that if the guard gets tired, he will be less effective. He could fall asleep and so on and so forth. Could end up with a wide variety of very interesting scenarios. Whatever the case, we have not had a Syndicate-like game in quite some time. I'm afraid the FPS really simply did not cover it. The fact of the matter is that Syndicate was a squad-based real-time strategy game, and it had an awful lot of interesting emergent possibilities in it, even back in the day when it was out on the PC and the Amiga, for God's sake. The idea of customizing cybernetic agents in order to try and take down various objectives or influence the citizens of the city. The Persuadertron was absolutely fantastic little device in order to do that. I remember running around with a bunch of Persuadertron civilians and having a bunch of fun with that, having them just pick up random weapons. It was pretty great. I'm also very impressed by the look of the game, which is a very cyberpunk, very neon look, which is exactly what I would have wanted from a Syndicate-style game. It's got an awful lot of color to it. I really like the look of the art style here. The team behind it has a good amount of experience. They worked on various titles like GTA 4, Darksiders 2, the Star Wars franchise, LA Noire, and so on and so forth. And they seem to have realistic goals. Also, they're trying to get Russell Shaw on the team as a stretch goal, which is in itself pretty fantastic. He worked on the Dungeon Keeper soundtrack, Fable, Syndicate, as well as Syndicate Wars Black and White, Theme Park, Magic Carpet. Yeah, he was fantastic. As with all Kickstarters, I would of course warn people, if you do not have disposable income to throw at a title which may very well never come out, then for the love of God, please do not go and get involved in a Kickstarter. However, if you like the look of this, which I certainly do, and you find it interesting, then head on over to the link in the description below this video to go and kickstart Satellite Rain. Please remember to read all of the material that they put on the Kickstarter site. There is a metric ton of really interesting information on how this game is actually going to work, which gives me a good amount of confidence in the actual title itself. Alright folks, that wraps me up for the day. Thank you very much for watching the content patch. Before I go, I would like to give you the OC Remix track of the day. It's not really all that often that we hear much about the music for Half-Life. It was composed by Kelly Bailey, and it was honestly fairly muted. There weren't all that many memorable themes. It was designed to be atmospheric and very much in the background, never really putting itself out there as something that was considered all that important. But it was a vital component, a linchpin of the sound design in those titles. Now, you don't get all that many remixes as a direct result of that, but Brent Wallman recently put out a track which is a remix of Alien Forces and LG Orbifold, and it's got a good amount of variety in it. Lots of different themes, lots of interesting ideas about how to interpret this particular track, which takes it from being something that was very much in the background to something that in itself has a very strong theme indeed. So hopefully you'll enjoy this. It's called Fearful Minds, and you can download that in the description below this video. Thank you very much for watching, folks. I will see you next time.